Up ahead to Stafford, left side of the floor. Goes far right corner, Steffi. Catch and shoot three, far corner. Yes, sir! What a start for Drew Steffi.
We are Southern Illinois.
Danger. They come near corner. Haynes attacks baseline right. Haynes one hands out. Kane Hawkins catch and shoot three on its way. Yes, sir! There you go, Seahawk. Seahawk makes his first career three, just like Daddy used to do here in this place. 2:30 to go till the end of the game.
Coach Nagy was calling that play all the way. The players knew exactly what he wanted.
It's time for Saluki basketball.
It's the rebound. Kane Hawkins goes down near sideline, up ahead to Weber. Weber with a two-handed monster slam again. Oh my, Jaheim Weber. Welcome to college basketball, Jaheim.
Now, here is the voice of the Salukis, Luke Martin.
We are in the midst of basketball season now after the season opener on Monday, which was a victory for the Salukis. It's now for the Charles Helene Classic here on Friday, which is the first Division I game of the season for SIU as the Roos of UMKC come in. With the coach Rodney Watson, I am Luke Martin, here to talk everything about this game on Friday against UMKC. Head coach of the Roos, Marvin Menzies, is going to take time to come and join us. I mean, you talk about a guy who's been just around everywhere in college basketball and has worked with some of the who's who in coaching. Can't wait to talk to him about that. But Coach Watson, here we are, already one game in with McKendree on Monday. But now with Division I teams starting to roll, we all know Salukis are going to have much tougher tests, and Kansas City will be the first D1 test here on Friday.
Yeah, Kansas City comes in with an interesting roster. They have one freshman, one sophomore, 10 juniors, 2 seniors, and a grad student. But there's a little bit of a connection there. Jerome Palm played with Isaiah Stafford. Chris Dockery came through Weber State, and he played with Stephen Verplanken, a former Saluki. So there's and we're going to see a lot of that on rosters where guys have a lot of personal experience with teammates because there's going to be a lot of movement for a while.
We had plenty of time, in our post-game show to recap McKendree, and I think the biggest thing is what we talked about with Coach Nagy afterwards was you did what you should do on Monday. I know that 6-minute near drought, it wasn't quite 6 minutes in the first half offensively, was a frustration point, but at least defensively, Rodney, McKendree really likes how they run their offense. And Coach Suggs says he's believed he's had an Elite 8 level type offense for their level at Division II. And I think for the Salukis, they'll hold them below 50 points. That shows a sign of the improvement that we've seen dating all the way back to Austin P Exhibition 1, and even just within the week's time, right, of seeing Lindenwood the week prior.
Yeah, there was one unfortunate part that McKendree didn't have their best three-point shooter. He'd stepped on one of the big guys' feet, and so their perimeter shooting just wasn't what McKendree will need to truly be a really good team because they're not there yet. But what was good about Southern is that they were able to put together a lot of possessions where they got shutouts, a lot of them. And when a team, and again, the numbers, I don't know where you guys out there were watching this with the numbers, but when you hold a team to 0.58 points per possession, that means that it takes 4 possessions to make a 2-point basket. And that's that's the reality of what these numbers mean. And that, and is Southern defense really good right now? No, I mean, it was okay. I mean, it was okay for November the 3rd and playing against McKendree. But it did give Southern the way they're going to play, especially their man-to-man defense. They're going to pick the ball up just above the 3-point arc, and they're going to have to really stop the drive. Because what happened to Southern, and the reason that House gets himself in foul trouble is that when you play off a guy somewhat and you don't pressure the ball or send a guy a certain direction into help, then an offensive player, I don't care what level you're playing, knows, look, if I go drive into him and create contact, when there's contact, there's probably going to be a whistle, and the whistle's going to go in the offensive favor. So Southern has got to get better at giving help defense on the dribble and the gaps. I thought in the first half, even though McKendree didn't score but 20 points, 22 points, something like that, that's an area where Southern's going to get better. But all in all, what is the most important thing about any defense is when that ball leaves the shooter's hand, and if it doesn't go on the net and it comes off the rim, who gets it next? And Southern was terrific in getting rebounds. They were the thing I liked about whether offense, defense, rebounding, whatever it was, Southern was very, very interested in this game because it was a game.
Yeah, and I think you have brought up multiple times in a lot of your interviews you've done, you really tip the cap to how Coach Nagy values rebounding, and not just words. They really do, and they work a lot at it throughout practice, and of course throughout the year too. Before we get to Marvin Menzies, just kind of one more note on the game. We talked about Damian Mayo's effort, deservingly so. He was our Saluki player of the game because he was plus 29, I believe, in the plus minus, and just impacted winning in so many ways. But as this bench starts to shrink, and we know it's going to start to shrink throughout the year, that's what really good teams do, right, Coach Watson? You're going to find that rotation. There aren't a lot of elite teams that are playing 10 or 11 guys, or especially 12 guys like Southern did on Monday night against McKendree. But Caden Hawkins, when he did get into the game, and I understand Division II team, but when Seahawk got into the game, he really maximized his time. And I think Caden Hawkins is going to be a great example for many guys on this team. He didn't play in either of the exhibitions. And if you watched his body language, if you watched how he was in practice, the dude never complained one time. And when he got rewarded and when he got an opportunity to play, he took advantage of it. I think there's a lot of those guys that can really take notes of what Caden Hawkins did on Monday night. And I think both of us would not be surprised. We're not saying this guy is going to get 30 plus minutes a game, but we are saying this guy is going to play a valuable part for this team.
I don't think there's any doubt with what you just said. And when we talk about shortening the bench, let's clarify that a little bit. What we're really saying is there's going to be 5, 6, maybe 7 guys whose minutes go up. And it's more so, not so many, it's not so much about, well, coach is only going to play 7 guys. No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that the guys that at this point in the season, it's just like Purdue playing Evansville this week. Man, Purdue played their guys a big minute. It wasn't because Coach Painter wanted to blow a team out. He needed his team to play meaningful minutes in a game. So with the Salukis, it's becoming apparent who the top 5, 6, 7 productive guys, who they are, starting with House and certainly Aligbe and then whoever's in the middle. Those guys' minutes go up. But a guy like what's beautiful about this, even if House's minutes are up at the point guard, Jalen Haynes is proving that he can handle the ball. He's getting more and more comfortable. I don't care about the competition level. He's getting comfortable. Caden Hawkins, as you said, he's a guy that comes in. And what I liked about Caden was when he got in the game at the last 3 minutes of each half, everyone's energy level took another little step of interest because they were playing at his level. When he said that his TJ McConnell was his guy, that's exactly who I saw the other night. Is he going to play enormous minutes? Well, if there's a catastrophe, and we don't want that. But that's another example where coach will play 11 guys, but 4 of them are going to get shorter minutes. And what they can do, like Caden did, can you stay interested? Can you be valuable? Like Austin Brooks on the 07 team. For people probably don't even remember who Austin was. He played 5 minutes for us, and he gave Mullins and Tatum such valuable rest, and we never lost a lead. That's where guys like whoever it is, Hawkins or whoever we talk about in that 8 through 11 spot, they've got to help this team.
About to welcome on Marvin Menzies, and you talk about a guy who's been around everywhere in college basketball. I think our fans will really remember him, that long stint he had at New Mexico State, getting them consistently into the NCAA tournament and winning games in the NCAA tournament. He then had a stint for 3 years at UNLV, and now back as a head coach at UMKC, which I don't think there's any secret. It's a really hard job, and he was the Summit League Coach of the Year just 2 years ago for the Roos. Really excited to talk to him, Rodney, because he is a journeyman in this business. He's been mostly on the West Coast. But, man, you look at his record, you look at his profile, this is a guy who has just worked with some of the best in college basketball.
I have a lot of appreciation for guys that start in the high school ranks, which he did. California guy, went to UCLA to school. Man, that dude this guy is set in a lot of seats, whether he's an assistant, been a head coach for a long time. The other thing I like about him, he's a ball coach. He appreciates it. He doesn't care. I mean, he wants to coach basketball, and you could just tell it by the way he speaks to us and the way he approaches college basketball.
Let's go ahead and welcome on the head coach of the UMKC Roos, Marvin Menzies. Thanks so much for the time. Hey, it's
No.
college basketball season now, brother. I know we were just talking before we went on. You're dealing with some home improvement stuff right now in your basement. But outside of that, how you feeling?
Well, that outside of the basement flooding, I'm simply marvelous. Life is good, excited, and ready to get after it. You know, we had a Division II team come in the other day, Evangel here, a local team. Actually, I think they're NAIA, and they gave us all we could handle, man. And then I saw Boston College lost, and I saw Reggie took at Bethune-Cookman took Auburn overtime, and Boise State lost, and TCU lost. I didn't feel too bad after the game because we got out of there with a W. So that's the nature of the beast at this time of year.
Yeah, there's no question about that, coach. And when you think of your tenure, I mean, been around basketball coaching in some form since 1983 to now. I know there's been so many changes in this landscape of college basketball since then. But for you, what still is in that heart of yours that makes you just love what you do each and every day to coach the Roos?
That's a great question. My wife really kind of revealed something to me when we were going through this basketball landscape change, because at the end of the day, you still got 13, 15, well, it used to be 17 or 18, but you still got, 15 guys that are your boys. And however they came to you, whatever scholarship, walk on, NIL, whatever was in place, those are your guys, right? And at the end of the day, it made it kind of crystallized like why I do what I do, which is the development of young men. And always just kind of my way to pay it forward was to give back in the life skills. And the basketball was actually just kind of a byproduct of that, to be honest with you. I didn't play basketball. I was just a football and track guy. But my old coaches invited me to come back and help. And then I fell in love with the sport. I always loved it. I just wasn't very good at it. So, but just the investment, man, back into these young men, that is still an opportunity to do that every single year. So, even with the adversity and the challenges, it's still, at the end of the day, man, we're still on the floor teaching, loving the guys. I tell you what has changed is, for me, you realize that you really want to be around guys that you want in your home, that you enjoy being around, good character guys from good families, guys from winning programs. Like I've done a much deeper dive into the person that I bring into the program than I think maybe before. When you're a younger coach, hey, you just want to get the best players and then you figure it out, right? That's not this guy anymore. But we've still been fortunate. So with the winning, I think is always going to be a byproduct of how you operate.
Coach, can you still coach young people the same way you did in the 80s and 90s? Do they? My question to you, and we're about of the same age, and I gave it up. I retired a couple of years back, and I know at that time we could. Now in Division II, we didn't. The money resource was different.
Right.
Can you still give kids tough love, and do you still believe that young people want the truth all the time?
I think, yes, I do think you can give them tough love if you have a relationship with them. I think that's what's changed the most. You have to make sure, and I've kind of always operated that way. My home is their home away from home. So, my wife Tammy and I have always kind of looked at them as our extended family. And so I think when you have a relationship like that, you can go at them hard, because at the end of practice, you're going to still say, I still love you, boy. And you can still joke with them and have a good time, even though you might have really jumped on them hard during practice. So, yes, I think for me and how I operate, it's still okay. But I have a lot of guys that I've brought up in the business, a lot of guys that are head coaches that who started out with me early. And then I also have a lot of mentors and bosses that some of them are retired now, like Coach Fisher and Coach Kruger, who were my former bosses. But I still talk to Coach Patino all the time. And, he's dealing with different challenges at a St. John's that I'm dealing with in Kansas City. So there's, every school has its own deal, and every player is different too. So it's a new puzzle. It's a new puzzle every year, and I think that's what makes that challenge is what makes it still fun for me. You're never going to get the same group of guys every year like you used to.
I think what's really cool about this game when people kind of dive into your background and Kansas City and then with the Salukis, there's some tie there. In college basketball, there seems like there's always a connection somewhere. Steve Fisher grew up in Heron, Illinois. He's a Southern Illinois guy to the core. I know you know that because I know he's very proud of it. You've got a couple of guys on your current team now. Chris Dockery, who I want to talk to you about. Man, can he rebound? And also Jerome Palm, who was at Dockery was spent a cup of coffee at Weber State with former Saluki Stephen Verplanken, and Palm was at Valpo with Isaiah Stafford. Those things I think will become more of a blessing when now that I know these two guys in particular, they're going to want to kind of show out against Salukis. If for no other reason, Palm wants to show Stafford he ended up at the right place.
Right. I think every guy has his own personal agenda. As long as it fits into the team concept, I'm fine with it. I always get a little weary of guys that might have too much of an agenda. Because then they can get out of the box, as they say, and maybe operate in a place that's not conducive to how we want to play that night. And it's not because they're selfish or they're just kids that are not about team, but it's that extra desire to perform for your family members that might be there or what have you. But I think both those guys are pretty mature at this stage of their career where they'll stay locked into what they have to do. I know obviously a guy like we played Weber twice, so I know Chris Dockery's obviously gonna want to perform well in those particular games. But I get that, and I usually have some conversation with them to kind of give them a perspective that can help them stay the course.
We'll talk about Petty and Branch in a little bit, but let's just stay with Chris Dockery, 6'6", about a 200-pounder, 12, 13 boards in your first game, and a guy that went to Weber, redshirt a year, like we'd like to see all young kids do if it works out, right? And then moved on to Independence Community College, a very good JUCO in Kansas, of course, averaged right at 17 points and 7 rebounds. Where has his game evolved? He's a Las Vegas kid, so obviously you had a kind of an in being, spending a lot of time in Vegas yourself. You probably knew about him through your channels. Where have you seen Chris Dockery grow?
In so many levels, he's just he's one of those guys that you want when you go into that portal or you go to a junior college, a kid who's kind of been through the fires a little bit and brings a different type of disposition and mentality to practice and to the team, the locker room. Excuse me. Those are all things that guys like Chris add to the program. So I would say, from when he was a younger player, I didn't really know him much, and ironically, it was kind of a cool story. So we're at Independence actually looking at another kid, and we noticed Chris's talent, and I'm like going, who's this guy? So and all of a sudden he comes over to me and he goes, hey coach, my dad. And I'm like, good, I'm glad to hear that. But who is your dad? His dad is Jeff, who's a friend of mine that I met when I was a head coach at UNLV. And so it was just, it was a wow moment, like, this kind of like perfect storm. And but he's exactly when I referenced earlier, the kind of guys you want to be around and having your family and so forth. So he brings that without me having to cultivate it, which is always nice.
You have an interesting roster. You have 10 juniors on your team. You have a freshman, a sophomore, and we'll call Powell a senior, even though he's a grad guy with 2 other seniors. 2 of your juniors seem to be, based on the box score that we had a chance to look at with Evangel, Jason Petty and Carmelo Branch. What did their scoring? They made up for about half your scoring. Did you expect that going into that game?
I honestly, offensively, I wasn't sure what to expect because we have we got 13 new guys, and coach, you know how that is. I mean, we're one game in with 13 new guys. I'm like, hey, I can anticipate or maybe project a little bit on how a young man practices to what my expectations will be. But that's never a proven formula. I've had guys that are great practice players and can't crack a nut in a game, and for no other reason than anxiety or stress or what have you. And then I have guys that are just, give you just enough in practice so you don't yell at them, and then they get in the game and they're Superman. So I guess to your point, or to your question, did I expect them to perform well? Yes. However, I think there's actually more in the tank for both of them because of the way that particular game unfolded. We have a few guys out that really complement them, and that dynamic wasn't there. So I'm hoping to get that back quickly. But yeah, no, I think those guys, they're proven in their own lanes. Carmelo in the junior college ranks. I mean, he was a pretty good scorer there, and then Jason obviously is a returning, preseason all conference pick was a guy that's highly respected in the conference as well.
Great. He made a couple of key free throws for you late in the game. A senior. Is he a returning player? And did it not surprise you the ball was going to be in his hands late when it counted?
It ended up that way. We had a couple guys that were options and towards the end of the game there, and either or would have been fine with it. It didn't surprise me that he made them. He's worked really, really hard in the off season, had a great off season. So I was happy for him. One of those guys that comes back, you want them to have shining moments individually, mutually exclusive from the team so they can, stay locked in and bought into that whole concept and senioritis doesn't come bite them on the butt.
Coach, you talked about 13 new guys, and you are far from the only program that has to deal with the roster turnover each year in college basketball, and even more so now. What have you found? And I think part of the answer is what you described earlier. You want guys that that you can bring into your home, bring around your family. Those characteristics are so important in terms of the culture. But what else do you believe is really important that you try to put your thumbprint on to try to find guys now in a much different recruiting cycle and a much different time?
It's I think the biggest thing is probably the competitiveness in gene that exists in some guys and in other guys it doesn't. And so, they all tell you they love the game. They all tell you they're gym rats. They all tell you, they want to play in the NBA. And they probably believe every one of those things. However, when you go up a level, you understand, well, you realize how hard it is to make it and what a real gym rat looks like. And, those kind of things, when you go through that transition, that happens with all of them. So you're going to hear those things. But what I really look for is guys that, guys that really want to compete, that enjoy competition, that don't get rattled and have emotional immaturity on the floor. Just guys that can be true benefactors of all the experience that my staff and myself have so that we can see the fruits of our labor. That's what you get a little bit more seasoned. You don't want to deal with too much extra, minutia with as far as the, academic issues and things like that. So there's a whole package that goes into what makes a guy appealing. And I mean, there's the obvious things, right? He's got to be talented and have, some good basketball IQ and some things like that. But I really like the guys that enjoy competing.
Coach, and you really warmed my partner's heart in Coach Watson when you were talking about those things of especially, everybody thinks they're a gym rat and all those things, expecting to go pro, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For you within your program, there's always, Coach Nagy preaches this all the time with his guys too. There's so much onus that has to fall on you guys and the work you put in outside of just your practice time.
Right.
I don't think every program is unique in this way, but what are ways that you and your staff go, you can really work through that minutia and there are things within your program of whether it's things you chart, whether it's things you try to stat outside of time with managers you have, like what are things within your program that you really try to say, all right, we know if we're truly putting in the work.
And that's a great question also. And that's kind of evolved after, doing this for a long time because a lot of coaches will lean into their own understanding and their own instincts. But let's face it, technology is advanced to the point now where you can give real evidence and show, a guy's output in practice, how much he exerts himself. It can be measured. I mean, that's an amazing tool that we use with Connexon. And then we have Shot Tracker, which is another tool that's used by plethora of NBA teams and Power 5 teams as well. So we've been real fortunate to be able to have Shot Tracker as a part of our program also, because those kinds of those kinds of technology, it makes it easy to sit with a guy and say, look, like, yeah, well, coach, I went and got up shots. Yeah, well, okay, here's what your brothers got up. Here's how many they got up. So, like, let's call it what it is. Call a spade a spade. Like, you got to understand it. If you really want those things, then these are the areas that you need to invest more in yourself.
Coach, how do you, on those lines, I love what you're talking about. Luke's referring to the phrase putting the work in. I just roll my eyes when I hear, like, there are about 6 guys at SIU in my 21 years. I could say, if you really think you're putting the work in, I'd like for you to follow them around for a day. But one area that, I think what you're talking about is with technology, we can become more objective, more measurable.
Right.
What's the phrase that we all wanted? I don't care if it was in Coach Wooden's era or this era now, it's playing hard. How do you convince kids, or how do you allow kids to measure if they're truly playing hard?
Well, it's video. I'm a big believer in you hear, you forget, and you see, you remember, but when you do, you understand. And being able to teach young men certain lessons about their game, or about, even if it's mechanics or fundamentals or whatever, there's a video to me is much more valuable now that it can be broken down with the huddle and the things, that the resources that we have, where you could actually show a young man. You can't argue with that. Like, it's hard to say. I mean, we had a couple kids that I'm sure thought they were giving good energy, and then I was able to show them next to an NAIA player sprinting back in defensive transition or offensive transition, and saying, what's your response to that? Like, you put them in the coach's seat, and then you say, hey, okay, what would you tell you? Why didn't you run back there? Like, I need to know what's in your brain. I'm not blaming you, and I'm not here to, like, chastise you and just discipline you. I'm here to try to, and I think that's a common thread for most of my conversations, is like, man, how can I help you, bro? Like, you see what I see, right? Yeah. Okay, well, what do we need to do different? Is it diet? Is it rest? Are you getting enough sleep? And we identify all of the measurables and try to find the one that's missing. Because it's not about just constructive criticism. It's about constructive correction. And it's I just made that up, by the way. I'm going to write that down. That's a new Marvinism. But it's really
your brand. We'll get you a brand going. I love what you're talking about.
Yeah, I love it. I love when these kids talk about brand. They're like, "Coach, that's my brand." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Raisin brand? I got no clue. What are you talking about here?" So, but no, it's really true though. It's engaging them in a way where the technology is used to help them invest in their own development. And I think that's probably the best way I could put it.
Coach, we really appreciate your time. And just before we let you go, just how your team looks on November 5th as we talk to you, no doubt is going to be different a couple weeks from now, let alone once we all get towards the end of February and early March. Just as you look at your group and you look at the outlook moving forward, once you guys get into Summit League play, where do you feel your team can be? Like, what are your internal goals that you continue to talk about with your group?
It's a evolving thing, right? Because, like you said, I'm not the only one with 13 new guys, right? So I don't know what the Summit's going to look like. I got no clue. When I was in the WAC, I could tell you. When I was in the Mountain West, I could tell you, because there was retention, there's turnover. Oh, this guy came back. Gosh, dog it. He put his name in the draft and he came back. All right. So we had a feeling and an awareness of style of play and all those things. And so you can't. It's just hard to measure. And now, if you ask me in 6-8 games from now, when we have our full roster, because we still don't even have our full roster now. We still have, 4 guys out. We'll be evaluating. They're not going to see the whole enchilada. So I'm hoping that by the time we get to conference, we'll be a well-oiled machine. We separate our individual skill development stuff from practice. So the guys are getting better all year long. we don't stop those individuals like what do the kids say when they're going to go get in the lab, right? So when they go into work, they say, I'm getting in the lab. Well, we keep that lab open all year long, which is I didn't create it. Obviously, I stole it from Coach Pitino, and that's how he's developed guys that are 3-star guys and made them NBA players. Is I don't even know if you know this. I mean, he has very little 5-star guys. I mean, now obviously in the new landscape, he's having to do that. But when I was working with them, I mean, we brought in just really talented players, but not the best in the country. And it was like going to a clinic every day as an assistant coach for him. I learned something every single day in terms of either management of staff or development of players or what have you. So I say that to say that I think we'll be significantly better, Luke, significantly better. I don't know how much, because better is relative to who you're playing and how good they are. And that's the big question mark. I have no clue who we're going to be playing yet.
No question. We know that makes a major impact for you, Coach, especially once you start getting in these games. And we really do appreciate the time. And I hope Saluki Nation loves their basketball, and they appreciate especially coaches who have been around the block. And they're going to love listening to your interview with us and are definitely looking forward to seeing your team in here on Friday. Coach Menzies, we really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, my pleasure, guys.
Coach Watson, I won't have the call with you on Friday. Larry Larson's going to fill in, and he'll do a fantastic job on the Saluki Radio Network starting at 6 o'clock for pregame, 7 o'clock tip on Friday. Just briefly, what are you looking forward to on Friday and the biggest things from a Saluki perspective that you have your eye on?
Yeah, just taking a one step forward every single game, just getting a little bit better, just seeing how guys approach the scouting report and how they guard, a continued terrific rebounding presence, offensively, even getting a little bit more in sync, looking for their shot. Perimeter shooting has got to start stepping up little by little, because, man, not only Friday is it real, but certainly in when these next couple of weeks, the perimeter scoring's got to be a factor.
No question. And it's going to start again Friday night, 7 o'clock tip inside Banterra. We hope to see Saluki Nation there. For the coach, Rodney Watson, for Coach Marvin Menzies, who joined us here on the podcast. We appreciate Coach taking time. This has been your Saluki Basketball video podcast. We look forward to Friday night. Saluki Nation, go Dogs!
This has been Saluki Royalty, the official podcast for Saluki Athletics. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review however you listen. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Saluki Sports Network.